Hi there, my name is Aksobhin and I'm bringing you another thought for the day from Malta. It's hard to avoid thinking about sickness and death at the moment with all that's going on in the world. In particular, I've been reflecting on the brave women and men who are doing their best to relieve suffering of all those who are caught up in the current crisis with the COVID-19 virus. Reflecting on this, I'm reminded of a verse from the Bodhicharya which I find inspiring. May I be medicine for the sick, and may I be their doctor and their nurse until sickness is no more. You quite often find metaphors of sickness and medicine in the teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha himself is often described as the great physician, and his teaching, the Dharma, as only medicine for this suffering world. I teach suffering and the end of suffering, the Buddha said. And he is not being pessimistic or trying to make us miserable. Quite the opposite, he is giving us both a diagnosis and a cure. What the Buddha is trying to point out is that life unavoidably involves pain. Even though he was an enlightened being, he himself experienced pain. Right up until the end of his life, as his body grew old and deteriorated. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta he says, "Now I am frail, Ananda, old, aged, far gone in years. This is my 80th year and my life is spent. Even as an old cart, Ananda, is held together with much difficulty, so the body of the Buddha is kept going only with an effort." So he experienced pain. He did not, however, experience suffering. He did not take the inevitable pain we encounter in life and turn it into suffering. We turn pain into suffering by trying to avoid it, by all the things we add to painful experience in trying to resist it or avoid it or deny it. All the useless strategies we apply in our efforts to make it go away. Fear, anger, blame, resentment, denial. These are some of the things we use in a vain attempt to flee from pain. Unfortunately, the unavoidable result is an ever-increasing burden of suffering, pain, more pain, and so on. So what is the alternative? Well, we apply the cure the Buddha himself pointed out to us, the art of mindfulness. The Sanskrit word we translate as mindfulness is sati. The mindfulness of breathing is a translation of the Sanskrit word anapanasati. Sati also has roots in to remember or to recollect. I try to remind myself of this as quite often I forget that I know how to practice mindfulness. I forget that I have access to training and skills that are of use in the everyday. Skills that will help me to deal with pain and suffering, if only I remember or recollect them. For example, we can use the skills we have developed to deal with distraction in meditation, to deal with pain when it arises in our daily life. First of all, we acknowledge the pain as best we can. We stay with the pain. We notice the mind's efforts to flee, to blame, to be resentful, and as best we can, we choose to let it go. Let go gently into the present moment. We could perhaps cultivate the opposite, bring kindness and gentleness to mind as fear and confusion arise. We can apply the sky-like mind antidote, refocusing the mind in order to see the reality of our wider experience, seeing the blame and resentment as clouds passing across a clear blue sky. We can consider the consequences of continuing to stay with this negative destructive thinking, and reflect on how it will pull us deeper and deeper into despair and panic, unless we choose to let it go. In the end, we can just sit. Just sit with all the painful thoughts and feelings until they pass, gently watching as they arise and pass away of their own accord, if we don't get involved with them. What the Buddha is trying to get us to see is that pain is not the problem. Suffering is the problem. All the things we do that turn pain into suffering. Buddhism does not take a pessimistic view of life, nor does it maintain that reality is evil, or that life is always unpleasant. Buddhism, in fact, is the art of happiness. It more often speaks of happiness, joy, and bliss than it does of pain and suffering. It simply acknowledges that pain is unavoidable. It is built into the way things are. It is nobody's fault. It just is. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is not. May I be medicine for the sick. May I be their doctor and their nurse until sickness is no more. Just as a blind person may find by chance a priceless jewel in a heap of rubbish, so somehow this Bodhi spirit is hidden even in me. It is the elixir of life which destroys death, the destroyer of all. A limitless treasure to destroy all poverty. The supreme cure for the world's suffering. It is a tree of rest for the wearied world, wandering on the road of being. It is a bridge for all travellers, passing over the waters of suffering. For the caravan of famished beings, blundering on the road of existence, it is a banquet of joy, which refreshes completely all who hunger for happiness. Breathe in with awareness, breathe out with kindness, as best you can. Go well into whatever your day brings your way.